Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. We're into college football week 9. The weeks are getting thin here. Only a couple more weeks left in the college football season. But one of the best weeks for Dynamite David in the green. We should call him Riverboat because he went on the Riverboat and he won some money for us. That's the second time this year that he's been in the green. So Yikes. A good week for the Dynamite. Nonetheless, I was on fire over the week. I believe I went 14-2 on bets just using the spread and the over-under. I went like 17-3 overall in the bets I made. So it was a ridiculous week, but you came out in the green, 10-40 in losses, but 17-61 in wins, which you on you, $721.37. That rounds that new balance up to 13,708, almost to the 14,000 mark. Back.
Got a little bit of time to catch you still.
Got a little bit of time to catch me, but, a couple more weeks, you make $721 a week off your gambling. You can live your life. Maybe not your life, but a single male life, which if that's what you chose to make your life a professional sports gamble, it probably would be a single life. So anyway, like I said, I had a huge week. I lost 11.25, but I won $3,983.33. So I netted $2,858 and that 33 cents. So my new balance is up to $33,674.87. I'm almost at about 1,000 a week averaged out on college football, so you can live a better lifestyle. Probably still a single one, but a better one nonetheless. But let's get into our best bets of the week. Probably your TCU call, -3.5 versus Kansas State.
That was scary at first.
Well, it should be because TCU is in the fun run of getting down 16 each game and having to make a gigantic comeback. But nonetheless, comeback ended up winning it pretty comfortably there.
Got a little help with down to third string quarterback.
Yes, at the back end. But nonetheless, TCU covered that 3.5, 390 on that one. Who did not help you?
Oof.
Though it was a pretty good week overall. Purdue was not helpful. Lost a 2-team money line parlay for you. Granted, UCLA was also in there. We thought about putting them in your worst bets as well, but this money line parlay covered. Plus, you had Purdue straight for 260. Just were not good at Wisconsin. So
no.
I don't quite know who's coming out of that side of the bracket. It looks more and more like it's going to be Illinois, which probably should sum up the Big Ten, as Illinois is going to be a 30-point underdog in the Big Ten championship game. But nonetheless, TCU good for you, Purdue bad for you. There was only one choice for me, Oklahoma State. I really, really liked it. I sorry it hadn't gone huge all college football season long, a couple here and there, but this was definitely my most aggressive play of the season. Oklahoma State getting 6.5. I put 500 on the 2-1 money line. I put 750 on the spread. Hit both those. Who was not helpful was West Virginia. Basically the only game I read completely wrong, but I don't know if I read it completely wrong. I think I just probably took too much from West Virginia. 2 weeks of playing good football, went on the road. Defense was shambles, and the quarterback decided to throw an interception every time he touched the ball. But Texas Tech with a big win. Also that Colorado State, Hawaii, but it was a big $500 loser. But in real life, betting, technically speaking, when I got there on Saturday morning, the spread was up to 6.5, and I was not about to be that aggressive on Colorado at 6.5.
Maybe the worst team in football.
Yeah, only to be outdone by their brethren there in Colorado. So, yes, counts as a loss because I gave it on Thursday, but technically in my life bets at home, once it got into the sixes, was not quite as bullish on the Colorado State State Rams. Funny enough, though, they are like 2-1 in the Mountain West right now, and bordering on if they can somehow win at Boise minus. They are 27-point dogs. They would sort of take control of the Mountain West, which probably sums up the Mountain West
down here for sure.
Right now. But let's get into Week 9. What did you make of Week 9 here? I'm not as confident in it as I was in Week 8, but it's sort of similar. I only ended up with about 13 sort of spread picks, which I usually will have about 25, 30 so I can do my parlays. And once again, I'm light on my parlays because I could only come up with about 13. I tried to put some in parlays, only could find about 5 or 6, and I just thought that's not worth the value there. So I'm a little short again, but I'm not short because then it all just ends up in like 15 straight bets. So what did you make of Week 9?
Yeah, like you, I was heavy on the straight bets this week. I made a few parlays, but I thought there was a good handful of odds I thought were interesting. I'm going to try to take advantage of some of them this week. Maybe I'm completely reading it wrong. Maybe Vegas knows something I don't know. But just some funny odds that I've looked at. I hadn't looked this morning to see if any of those have moved a little bit since I made my picks. But, started a little bit last week. We're really getting into the separation games here and conference standings-wise. Got some good ones, really good ones next week. Yeah. Late October, early November, these are huge games for, playoff implications and stuff like that. So we're getting some really good football, and hopefully I can get on a streak of winning some money.
Yeah, let's see if we can finish out in the green the last couple of weeks. All right, let's start out in the ACC. Notre Dame, Syracuse play. Syracuse... We would have had another huge win that would have put me even more over the top. And basically, if not for a last 10 minutes of the game decision by Dabo, I think Syracuse had it. But he pulled DJ, who that was probably the worst he's looked all year, I'd say, other than maybe that Georgia Tech game. But he put the backup came in, bam, bam, bam. And a couple sort of bad plays on the offensive side of the ball by Q's. Q's ended up covering pretty easy. I think we both were pretty confident in the spread there.
I had the spread there, yeah.
But I almost had that money line combo package. But Notre Dame... it's very weird. They have some good wins, and if you look at it, they've been the only ones who can even stay within a hand of Ohio State so far this season. But they also have some really, really bad losses. Off week last week after that really, really bad loss to Stanford. Though Stanford's now won 2 in a row, so maybe Stanford's coming around. Who knows? We'll see this weekend. But what do you make of this game? We actually differ on how we think this will play out. So what do you make of Notre Dame Syracuse here?
I haven't really liked anything Notre Dame's brought to the table this whole year, and I think Syracuse is a really well-coached team, and I think they're going to play well at home in this one. I don't think of, you said maybe Stanford's getting good. I don't believe that. I think Notre Dame just can't really put together many good football games from start to finish. And I think Syracuse is going to rebound off this letdown, but I don't think they're going to be underperforming at all. Their defense is really solid. Run game's still there. I think they're going to take control of this one early.
Yeah, I think that's a smart play. Is Syracuse just the better team? I mean, even last week, they played a really good game versus Clemson. It was just, a really good coaching decision by Dabo, who pulled that right when he had to, and they moved on offense. Now we'll see what Clemson is the rest of the year. They're going to go with DJ, which I guess that's what you do. Up until that point, he'd been pretty solid, but and really they don't play anybody of meaning left. So I guess that's it. But I'm a little nervous for a letdown game in here. Is Syracuse? I would love this much, much more if it was in, Notre Dame. But I just feel like Syracuse knows they had that game. And if they had won that one, they would be the ones with the pretty easy schedule into the championship game. And I think if Syracuse had ended up going undefeated, I don't know quite how you keep them out of the playoffs. And, they're undefeated and win their conference championship. So I think that might get into their heads a little bit. I must admit it's not as big as I wanted. I was hoping it'd be in that 4 territory more than the 2.5. But I think worked into this line a little bit is they're a little nervous how Syracuse is going to bounce back here off that Notre Dame game, especially the one thing Notre Dame's sort of been able to do this year is sort of contain the run a little bit, so maybe that's been Syracuse bread and butter. That could be it, but this is a totals just sort of, play of I think Syracuse might struggle bouncing back. It probably would be smarter to maybe play this first half Notre Dame line than the full game. But I'm curious to see how Syracuse bounces back. All right, let's go to one that I'd say borders. The next two border on meaningful games. But nonetheless, Wake Forest, Louisville. But Louisville's been playing really good football the last couple days. Defense has found themselves. Offense is, I'd say, consistent. Wake's easily probably the second best team in the ACC right now. But always a tough spot to go on the road in Louisville. You're really big on Wake here on the -4. I was on the stay away here. I don't know quite what to make of Louisville. I really like Scott Satterfield, so I'm just a little nervous with Wake going on the road here in Louisville. But what did you like about this one?
Yeah, I just think Wake's going to be able to really move the ball well in this one. And I look at Louisville, and they're kind of up and down this year. They're playing better as of late. You said their defense has been better, but I watched them a lot earlier in the year, and I'm not big on it. And I think this is going to be an easy game.
I should mention been better for poor teams here. It's not exactly like they shut down an offense like Wake. It's been better versus like Virginia and Pittsburgh.
and I think the real separator here is I don't think Louisville's offense is going to be able to keep pace with Wake's offense here. I think Wake's going to be able to run away with this one. I like Wake. They're my favorite team out of the ACC. I'm still disappointed they dropped that one to Clemson. I think they're the best team, top to bottom, but things just didn't go their way in that overtime game. But I'm going big on Wake. Probably one of my biggest plays of the year.
Yeah, we still haven't been able to petition the ACC just to put Wake in the championship game, which might be hard to do because technically speaking, North Carolina possibly the worst one-loss team I think either of us have ever seen.
Yeah, I had to do a double take. I'm like, they still only have one loss apparently.
What's sad is if you look at their schedule, it might finish with only one loss.
Yep.
Pittsburgh comes into town. They've been thoroughly disappointing, to say the least, this year. And I already started to read some stuff where the coach is on the hot seat. So, way to go. One good year, and then you're about to get canned. But I don't know what to make of North Carolina. We've watched them play. You've gotten burned by them a couple times here. Granted, they pulled that Georgia State game out. They somehow pulled that Appy State game out. Two teams who are not all that great. They got murdered by Notre Dame, who we were just talking about, isn't all that good. So what do you make of North Carolina here? I must admit, I'm staring at that spread at 3 at home. I really want to take North Carolina here, but I don't know. I know Pittsburgh's no good, but I think North Carolina is better than Pittsburgh, but something just is telling me do not mess with this game. This should be an automatic cross-off because you have no clue what North Carolina is, and, Pittsburgh, technically speaking, is the only team that played Tennessee tough all year long, and they did it with backup quarterback who was on one leg. Granted, that possibly is the only good game they played all season long. So what do you make of Pittsburgh, North Carolina here? Because you have taken North Carolina a handful of times this year. You probably saw that spread and were a little tempted as well.
Honestly, I was actually, because I'd been burned by North Carolina, I was tempted by Pittsburgh
go the other way.
And just looking at North Carolina's history on defense, they make every quarterback they play look like a Heisman candidate. They just don't cover. But then I look at Pittsburgh these last few weeks, and they have been just bad. Haven't been able to do anything on offense. Only scored 10 points last week. Slovis is back in there the last few weeks, and he's been throwing more picks than touchdowns. Now, maybe the North Carolina is a team to turn it around against. That's why, like you, I think this is a stay away. don't know what you're going to get out of
Yeah.
North Carolina, and like they make bad teams look good. App State has gone on to actually be very mediocre at best the rest of this year, and they put 60 on them.
Yes. I think Notre Dame putting 40 on them it might be more deserving.
This is just too many red flags here. Usually if I look at something and I can see reasons to play either side, I don't go near it. I like to look at one side heavily favored, and I just don't see it in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm trying to resist, but I'm not going to lie. The low North Carolina at home total is calling my name just to be burned and angry all day Saturday when they give up 50 points to Pittsburgh. All right, let's get into our straight bets here in the ACC. What are you looking at out of the ACC?
Yeah, the first game we talked about, I like Syracuse in this one, minus the 2.5. I didn't put a whole lot in it. Just a little scared we might get good Notre Dame, but I think Syracuse is the better team. They have been all year. They've been way more consistent than Notre Dame, and they're at home. I like them less than a field goal here, so I've got a 1-unit play on that. Next up, one we didn't talk about, two teams that have been underperforming for sure this year. I've got Miami -2 at Virginia. Miami just lost to Duke last week, but I look at Virginia's ability to score the ball. They're averaging like 14 points a game. Miami, even though they're losing games, they're scoring in the 20s. So I think this is going to be just where Miami has a little bit more offense and can cover that too. And then finally, my big 5-unit play of the week, I'm taking Wake -4 at Louisville. I just think they're going to come out and really roll in this one.
All right, I got 3 plays here. 2 well, basically, you could probably call all 3 not actual ACC plays. They're independent plays, but they're playing ACC teams. We already talked about it. Notre Dame. I'm gonna take the 2.5 as well. Pretty low play, 250. Lower play even than that. I'm going UConn plus the 8 versus Boston College. I just think this UConn team is spunky. They fight hard, and Boston College, I don't know if you can say that they fight hard. Granted, they are the team that just beat Pittsburgh, so I don't know quite what, but it's a little weird, too, that Boston College is going to UConn here to play. Now, granted, they aren't exactly separated by thousands of miles, but it's weird that the ACC team is going into UConn to play a home game here. So I'm going to take the 8. I'm also going to take the UConn money line plus 260 here versus Boston College, though. Boston College, last 4 weeks has sort of been a little better. Mostly just based on the Pittsburgh win, but granted, they've been a little pluckier than they were at the start of the year, so maybe they're just better than UConn, but I like the way this UConn team fights. They sort of stick around. I look for them to be able to cover the 8. I don't know if they can pull the upset. There probably just is a little bit too much talent discrepancy there, but I thought 260 was a good price. All right, let's move to the AAC, and yes, East Carolina. Can spring the upset for Central Florida, I should say, which took a little bit of the luster off this game here. So Cincinnati, Central Florida. This one line I has moved weirdly to Central Florida's favor. I guess that's a home thing because you got yours at a pick'em. I got mine at +2 for Cincy here. I'm just all about Cincy. It's sort of the opposite of North Carolina. No one's talked about North Carolina and their 1-loss record. Sort of rightfully so because we think they're bad. But I think no one's talked about Cincinnati and their 1-loss record, and I think they're actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Not as good as last year's team. If you're watching anybody in the NFL, Cincinnati has like 4 defenders who are rookies who are playing really, really good football. So I think that team was a little better last year than people thought. So anyway, Cincinnati +2 versus Central Florida. The Central Florida team is weird. We talked about it a little last week, going to East Carolina. Central Florida seemed to put together their offense and were scoring high, and then
But 10 points on the board.
And then crashed and burned on the road at East Carolina, who,
They've been all right.
solid, but I wouldn't call it a defense that would hold someone to 10, certainly a Central Florida to 10. So is it just, Central Florida a little bit of a look ahead last week on the road versus, East Carolina, solid team? or is this just every time Central Florida plays somebody a little bit with a pulse, they tend to drop down? We mentioned that loss to Louisville, a couple weeks ago, earlier in the season.
Yeah, I don't think this game's going to be quite as big of a blowout as the Eastern Carolina game, because if you look at the stats from that game, Central Florida threw 3 interceptions that really changed the tide in that game early. Cincinnati's better, but I think Central Florida may be able to avoid some of those mistakes, especially staying at home. But I think the discrepancy at coaching here, I think Cincinnati's the much better coached team, and I think they've got a little bit more talent on defense. So I like Cincinnati here, and you're getting points here. Yeah. I think that's a no-brainer.
Well, judging by the way the lines moves, the money seems to be coming on Central Florida.
Maybe worth a money line play if it keeps going.
At this rate, I just wait and see till Saturday, because I don't know if they'd bump it to that key number, because I figure once it goes to that key of about 3.5, money will start coming in on Cincinnati. But if it gets there, I'd be even more aggressive on my Cincinnati pick here, road or not. Granted, Central Florida hadn't lost at home in forever until that Louisville game, but they've already shown that they have the ability to lose at home now. So should be an interesting game. See if Cincinnati can sort of dominate. Definitely a backloaded sort of schedule for them. Got that win at SMU, got out to a hot start, then sort of faded down the stretch, but pulled it off nonetheless. All right, bets in the AAC. We both only got one, and it's Cincinnati, the one we had talked about. So we both got Cincinnati here. Nothing else. It was a light AAC day. Yep. Big 12. This one is on here mostly just because it's on here because it's just a point where they haven't had many of these this year, but the Big 12, the actual Big 12 team going to the East Coast playing a noon game in West Virginia. TCU has gotten down now 16 points twice. I'm not sure they can continue to get into that hole and make the comeback, but West Virginia was awful last week. They
were the ones traveling last week.
And now they were the ones traveling. It wasn't a noon game, but was it just a blip of West Virginia playing some poor teams here, or do you think they'll have any life, in this spot? I will say I've broken a little bit of my rules because they were so bad last week, because this is usually just an auto play for me anytime there's a noon game with a Big 12 team, but I didn't even take the spread. I put a little on the money line, but that quarterback play was so bad, and Texas Tech, who is basically TCU light, just shredded them, and I don't even know if the East Coast noon game is going to be enough there. And the other thing, I think if TCU gets up in this game, the fans are going to turn out. They're already a little, I'd say, prickly right now about West Virginia basically being just worthless for the last 3 or 4 years under this coach. So TCU, West Virginia, I put it here. Any chance for the West Virginia upset on the noon game here?
I was thinking exactly just that. You taught me the last few years, these Big 12 teams, when they go into West Virginia at noon, they almost always cover the spread here. But I'm a little nervous about this one. While West Virginia's had points in time this year where they've actually played really well, I was surprised a couple times they dominated Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech on that weird Thursday night game. That surprised me a little bit. But then just they really looked bad, and I don't. TCU's got playoff implications. Yes. They've got playoff in their head, and I think they're focused, and they've got a good coach. And I don't think this early game is going to throw them off. Not bad enough to where they lose to West Virginia. They, I think Vegas, they're looking at the same stuff we're looking at, keeping that line at only 7.5. I think neutral site TCU is almost a 3-touchdown favorite over this West Virginia. So, I think they win this pretty good. You took the money line, but I don't know if they even sniff the spread, to be honest.
If I had another good one to sort of bounce it off of that I wanted to throw away, but most of the other money lines that I put in here I kind of like. So I didn't really have one I wanted to throw away. And then, the two that are very unlikely to hit, I certainly didn't want to put them in a parlay and have one of them hit. And then West Virginia be the one that screws me over in the parlay. Yeah. So I didn't have much of a choice on that one, but we'll see how it holds and see how TCU goes out there. Other big one, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Lot of sort of balls in the air for that sort of second spot right now. I think TCU. I mean, they could still drop one or two more games, but I think they probably have a good solid spot locked up there unless something really, really bad happens. But Oklahoma State, Kansas State, certainly two battling, for that spot there. Texas probably eliminated. Oklahoma's still sort of alive a little bit. I don't know if they'll have enough to win enough games.
Yep.
They might drop one or two, but nonetheless, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, hard to see what they're being a little tight-lipped about what quarterback's going out there. But also it's a little bit like Air Force, Army, Navy. It doesn't totally matter what quarterback is out there. It matters a little bit because they do Pele action throws, rollouts, but a lot of it is, your basic pistol option. So as long as they can handle a pistol snap and be able to run the offense, they're usually all right. So Oklahoma State coming off the big win here versus Texas, then they go into Kansas State and win this one. How are you sort of handicapping this one?
Yeah, Oklahoma State, these two teams battling for the second spot. You said, Kansas State's got one more loss, but if they win this, they get the tiebreaker over Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State.
And I think their back end schedule is actually pretty light. They've played most of their
Kansas State.
Yes.
Yeah. I think if they get by this one here, they're actually maybe looking pretty to get to that second spot. But I think Oklahoma State's the better team. I'm a little nervous that they're going on the road here for this one, but that spread being that, getting points with the better team, I'm going to take that. I like, Oklahoma State had TCU up until the very end of that game. They didn't win the game, but I think they still may be the best all-around team in the Big 12. So I'm going to take them to rebound. They rebounded well against Texas last week. Defense stepped up, and I think their defense is going to be ready for this Kansas State team.
The other thing that concerns me about Oklahoma State here is this is the third big game in a row.
Yeah.
TCU on the road, then back home, big game versus Texas, get that big win. Now up again on the road versus Kansas State. That makes me a little nervous. That's a hard three, sort of game gauntlet to sort of ride through there. There was no off switch there. So as much as I think this line benefits Oklahoma State, I was just in a stay away mood from this after last week. I got my big win on them, and now let's see if they can go on the road and win it. That's all for the Big 12, good matchup wise. But what do you got bet wise here out of the Big 12?
We're going to start off. You mentioned them earlier. Oklahoma really it's turning it around. They've got Dylan Gabriel back. Offense seems to be churning again. And they're only -1 at Iowa State. Now Iowa State plays good defense, but I don't know if Iowa State can score more than 20 points, and
even versus Oklahoma defense.
And I'm pretty sure Oklahoma's going to score more than that. So I really like Oklahoma just -1. And I just said it earlier. I'm going to take Oklahoma State plus the 1.5. I think they're the better team, and I think they've learned a little bit. They've been through the gauntlet the past few weeks, but I think that experience is going to have them ready for this big matchup.
Yeah, I also have Oklahoma -1. This just. Oklahoma and Baylor, I put sort of on a similar level here. Offensively, pretty good. Defensively, a little shaky. And Baylor went into Iowa State, 3 or 4 weeks ago. We both jumped on that one. I think it was 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And they went in there and handled it pretty well. This isn't an Iowa State team that's going to, be filled in the stands this kind of year. It's sort of a down team. So I don't think the energy is going to be there to sort of, keep this upset. Not only that, Oklahoma's a little down. So, it's just, it won't have the atmosphere that a typical game, going into Ames will have. So I think Oklahoma goes in there, puts enough points on the board. The only thing I would be worried about, is similar like Kansas State, where, Iowa State's just capable of running the ball, holding the ball control the whole game, and Oklahoma gets 4 opportunities to try to score points every time. But I don't think Iowa State's on that same level as Kansas State in being able to sort of control the ball and the clock, and defensively, I don't think they're as good as Kansas State either. So I'm going Oklahoma minus the 1, and I'd probably grab that one early because I feel like that's one that might creep up to 2.5, 3 by Saturday. Certainly once people sort of see it, game day wise. I'm going to go West Virginia plus the 235 versus TCU. I already mentioned it. I don't love it, but I feel the need to at least use my theory at some point in time that whenever a Big 12 team goes east, they struggle. But I don't have enough gumption after last week's embarrassment of having West Virginia on my schedule. And I think I've bet West Virginia 3 times this year. I think I've covered, and I think they've been blown out in every one of them. So, yeah, I'm just going to put money line, see if TCU comes out sloppy, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. But moving on to the Big Ten, we put some big games on the board, and they certainly are big in name, but I'm not really convinced we're going to get some great football games here. Ohio State, Penn State, I just don't think Penn State's defense is very good. They aren't going to be able to slow them down. No. We saw offensively they couldn't even move the ball in Michigan, so I'm not... I guess you could give a little bit of home field here for Penn State, but I'm not sold this isn't a huge blowout. But what do you make Ohio State, Penn State?
Yeah, there's just no way Penn State's offense can keep up here with the amount of points that Ohio State's going to put on the board. Now, Ohio State has done that against lesser competition all this year.
So had Michigan up to that point.
Yeah, so we'll see what Penn State can do defensively at home. They always have a good crowd behind them there. But this one may be over by halftime.
Yeah, I'm not too really. It looks better on paper than it does, I think, when the reality sort of sets in. But maybe Penn State can come up with something. But I'm not sold on that. The odds makers aren't sold either. Yeah. By the way, Michigan State, Michigan also. This seems like a pretty big mismatch. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to ride the just trend that Michigan State has owned Michigan basically for the last 10, 12 years. And, Michigan State hasn't really been good for the last 5 years. So the trend has continued, even though Michigan State has gotten poor. But I'm also not really sold all that much that Michigan State can stay with them. The spread at 23 seems a little large. But other than that, I'm not fully convinced we're getting a great game here, too, as well.
I wasn't big on Michigan scoring a whole lot of points against tougher competition, but then they went and did what they did to Penn State. So,
Michigan State might understand that Michigan is only good at running the ball.
Yeah, I'm still shocked at the amount of points that Michigan puts on the board with the way their offense is. So I think the 23 may be a little too generous here, so that may be worth a look. But, rivalry game, maybe we'll get something out of it, but this Michigan State team has been awful.
Well, that's basically my what I'm basing my strategy. It's a rivalry game that Michigan State has somehow come out on top more or less the last handful of years. Yeah. I don't know if that's a good strategy, especially judging from the way Michigan State has played this year, but nonetheless, I'm going for it. So nothing for you out of the Big Ten this week?
No, I got nothing here.
I got a lot out of the Big Ten. I'm going Nebraska plus a 7.5 versus Illinois. Granted, we probably should be putting Illinois in here in every big game. They are 7-1. Probably should technically be 8-0 if anybody goes back and watches that Indiana game.
I don't know if I'm brave enough to play Illinois -7 on the road, but anywhere right now.
I am not playing Illinois -7.5 on the road. I think everybody is just tired of losing money on Illinois because they've basically been getting low spreads for
they've been dogs all year, I think.
7 straight weeks, and then all of a sudden they become a touchdown favorite on the road. Now, granted, Nebraska, no telling what you're going to get.
Yeah, tough place to go.
But they have been at least spunky at home. They don't win, but games are close. So 7.5, I like that value. I'm going to take Nebraska plus the 7.5 there. Northwestern is getting 11 points versus Iowa. If you watched that game last week versus Maryland, they were up 10 going into the fourth quarter and should have won that game and did Northwestern things to melt. But Iowa doesn't score more than 10 points, and so when you give somebody 11 for a team that barely can score 10 versus a team who also doesn't score, that seems a very generous spread. So I'm going Northwestern plus 11 on that one. I mentioned Michigan State plus a 23. I'm going to take that. And then we're just going to grab the money lines and see if we can spring it up his set with a lot of really bad sort of Big Ten teams here. The one I do like, the Northwestern plus 345. I do think that's pretty good value. Northwestern's played actually, I don't want to say good football, but better football. Their defense has come around of late. So, and Iowa has not played good football. They got just massacred by Ohio State last week. So that plus 345 I like. 245 versus Nebraska is all right. I wish it was a couple points higher, but still I think good value. And I'm just going to throw a long shot. As I've mentioned, Michigan State has owned this rivalry over the last handful of years, even when they haven't been all that good. So 12-1, throw a shot on it, maybe a miracle block punt with 1 second left and return for a touchdown to win the game happens. I did win money on that game on the money line, so you never know. All right, let's go to Conference USA. North Texas, I will say last week, played a solid game versus UT San Antonio, just not quite enough. They go, I guess I'd call Western Kentucky sort of the other power in Conference USA. It is sort of I'd say a one-team division and then a large drop-off into the tier of Western Kentucky, UAB, North Texas, the likes of them. You might throw UTEP in there. I don't really know. They're all sort of 4-5-win teams right now. But North Texas goes to Western Kentucky. I was shocked that this was a 10-point spread. I know North Texas has struggled on the road, but I was impressed with them going to UT San Antonio. I have not been impressed with Western Kentucky. I thought they sort of underachieved a little bit all year long. Even though they have the wins and are 2-1 in conference, it's not that pretty. So I like the North Texas plus 10. What do you make this North Texas Western Kentucky matchup?
Yeah, I think it'll be a high-scoring game. North Texas moves the ball really well. You said it; they struggle a little bit on the road, so it'll be interesting to see if they can keep enough points to stay even with this Western Kentucky team that they can score the ball and they move it pretty well. But they haven't quite. I think I had them preseason. I think second in the conference. Yeah. They haven't quite performed to that level yet. So the 10 may be good value for North Texas, but I was just staying away from this one. I like both of these teams, and I really couldn't pick a side.
Well, this is an important game for one of these two teams. Probably separates themselves into sort of the second place spot here. So North Texas. Plus the 10. We'll get into our bets. You don't have anything in Conference USA. I got a couple things. North Texas plus the 10 versus Western Kentucky. We mentioned it. I'm also going to take UTEP minus 1.5 versus MTSU. I think the odds makers are just watching the MTSU game versus Miami and not watching them play any of the other games they played.
Well, I think I took MTSU once after that Miami game, and they just got slaughtered. So not a very good football team.
No. So, they did the same thing last week. Florida Atlantic went into UTEP, and UTEP, I mean, they aren't good, but they're hard to play in El Paso. So you're giving me 1.5 versus MTSU, who basically has been awful other than the Miami game. So I'm going UTEP minus 1.5, and then I'm going to grab the money line versus North Texas plus 300 versus Western Kentucky. I do think that one's a pretty good value. And then I'm going North Texas, Western Kentucky under 70. I know that game's going to be high scoring, but 70 seems like quite a large total in this game, especially like if North Texas, who has struggled on the road, you saw it last week, UT San Antonio 35-28, and I think that's probably where this game in and around Lance. Now, if we get overtime or something, then, all bets are off. But I think the 70, that skirt's a little high. I think this probably needs 65, 66 range would be more where I was thinking on this one. All right, let's go to, where are we? There was nothing in the MAC. There was nothing in the Mountain West. Tough weeks for the...
I'm sad about... I'm still... I've said this week after week. I'm really sad. I'm disappointed with the Mountain West this year because we really made a lot of plays and money on that conference for the past couple of years, and they've really let us down this year. Not much good action.
It's just weird. Every one of the teams who have... Nevada is... dropped off a cliff. Fresno sort of dropped off a cliff. A lot of that was due to injury.
UNLV.
Midweek. Well,
I think they fell off.
They were always sort of falling off the cliff no matter what. But, San Diego State hasn't been what they normally are. Air Force is disappointed. Boise State sort of is disappointed, but since they've made the quarterback change,
But still nothing in comparison to where they've been.
No. And certainly if they had to play a team with offense, I don't know if they would be able to score enough points. Their defense might keep them in it, but I don't know if they would score enough points. And then, San Jose State was rolling high, and then you threw your jinx on them, and they lost. And then, sadly...
Fresno.
And then sadly the guy died last week, and the game got canceled. So we'll see where their head's at. But, it's been a little hard to gamble on the Mountain West. In the MAC, there were only 2 games this week because I think they're going to start their midweek stuff, starting up next week. So there wasn't a whole lot of action. There was like Toledo and Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the time of year where we're going to start getting the Wednesday and Thursday MAC action as I think I saw something, we've got 27 days straight now with a football game being played. So a lot of midweek football coming up.
Nothing like football burnout on the way here as I try to handicap games every day of the week. All right, let's go to the Pac-12. There's one, which is a midweek game, Thursday night.
Yeah.
Utah goes to Washington State. This Washington State team started out pretty spunky. Their quarterback's really, really good. But they've dropped off a little bit here. But granted, they had a pretty difficult, sort of run there. It was, that part of the schedule where it was just hard. You just hope you get one or two of those wins.
Tough road games.
They didn't get any of those wins, and, then your season looks worse than it actually was. But Utah's going there, 7-point line here. I was in total stay away here because I think this Utah team probably is the best team in the Pac-12. Oregon maybe, but I still think this Utah team offensively is probably the best, and I think the defense will eventually find itself. We'll see Pac-12 championship game for sure, but I certainly don't like the spot of being a 7-point favorite going into Washington State. I was just totally stay away from this. I think this is the first time I haven't had a pick on any of the games during the week. So what do you make of this Utah-Washington State? You were a little more curious about it than I was.
Yeah, normally I like Washington State getting the points at home, and I think if it had been about 4 weeks earlier, I probably would have taken this one. But they've just kind of, they've fallen off the wagon. They've dropped some games. I don't know if they're going to have the fight that they may have, been normally bringing into this one. And I think Utah's already been tested a lot this year. They got the big win over USC, and I think they're going to be able to go in and take care of business. But this spread is just way too uncomfortable for any kind of play here. You like Utah, but over a touchdown on the road.
Yeah, I think the only play you could make would be to take Washington State in the 7.
Yeah.
I just think it would be too dangerous to take that on the road, but I don't trust Washington State right now enough to sort of hold this Utah offense.
Yeah, I mean, this may be worth teasing, one direction or the other, either in Utah's favor or Washington State favor. That 7.5 is just really at an uncomfortable spot.
Yep. There's just no way to sort of bet it. I've been looking at an angle to try to do it, and I just don't have one. So no bets for the midweek this week. But we do got some Pac-12 bets.
Head-to-head here.
We're on a head-to-head. So where are you going Pac-12?
I'm taking USC minus the 13.5. I looked at this one, and I know who you're going with. You've been big on them all year, but I think this USC offense is
big seems a.
This may be the third or fourth time you've picked them.
That is correct. I have thought they have played better than their number.
But I just think this is one USC is going to get right, and I think they're going to be able to win this big. So I just got a 1-unit play on them minus the 13.5, just under that 2-touchdown mark.
Well, see, they have gone up to 15 now, so I'm very big on this Arizona team. They're spunky.
So I'm on with the public right now.
You're a public better right now, which just might be the way to go. But I think this is a tricky spot. USC going down to Arizona in Tucson on a night game. I think that'll be a little weird for them. The weather's always a little bit weird there this time of year. So I think Arizona, who's played well and stuck around they stuck around versus Mississippi State.
Yeah.
They've hung around a lot. They haven't been blown out this year. And, some of this has to do with probably a little bit, I'm tired of hearing USC whining that the refs in the Pac-12 have a grand scheme against them to screw them over because they're leaving for the Big Ten. Or they just don't play good defense and they've been sitting there waiting to be beat for, 8 straight weeks. I think that's the other thing that's factored in. We've watched this USC team, and they have good number wins. It looks fancy when you just see the score, but if you watch the game, It's been tight every week. And even if they get up, they always seem to let you back in. And I just think this Arizona team can hang with them. So I'm going to take the 15 on Arizona. I'm really big on this one. I got to play on the money line as well. I'm going to go for it because it's just a feel more than anything. But I'm not sold on that. The 15 is where I really push my money in because I think this Arizona team's a little bit better than people think. And I think that coach has done a hell of a job. We'll see in a couple of years if they can really sort of right that ship. Both Arizona and Arizona State have the ability, to be better than they've been in football, in basically their whole lives. Arizona State's been much better than Arizona, but, nice campus down in Tucson. If you can sort of right that ship where you can pull from Texas and California in that recruiting area, you should be able to be better than they have been. So Arizona plus a 15 versus USC for me. Arizona, we're going to take the money line, and then we didn't get it quite where we wanted it because it was
up almost to 80.
When we looked on Monday, when we started looking at our picks, it was at 79. I got it at 76.5, but I'm going to take the under 76.5. I just make it a rule. If stuff goes over 70, we're right in the under here, and just playing that the game will not be played in the 40s and 50s, even if it is USC and Arizona. So, the 79 would have been nicer, but we'll go with it anyway. USC, Arizona, under 76.5. All right, SEC time. Couple of big matchups here.
Yeah.
Big matchups of look-ahead games for next week.
Both these teams.
Florida, Georgia, let's start out, the world's greatest cocktail party.
You can't call it that anymore.
I can call it whatever I want. Florida versus Georgia. You are more in the Florida camp than I am. I've seen too much of this Florida defense and breakdowns, and maybe that offense can control the ball enough, but I just, if Georgia gets up on them quick, sort of like LSU did a couple of weeks ago, I just don't know if this Florida team can get the stops that they need. So now, granted, the number is huge, So, 22, it's a little bit like the Michigan State play that I have, ahead. That just seems like a large number in a game that is always semi-close. It hasn't been as lopsided as, Michigan State having dominated Michigan. But what is your feel with, you liking Florida here?
Yeah, it's a lot of it's the same kind of feel like you just said with that Michigan State, Michigan play. It's the rivalry factor, and it's a neutral site game. Even though Florida's got some losses this year, they're going to be up for this one. I think they're going to be ready. And I just think that 22 is way too large. I think, while Richardson still has, I think, more interceptions than touchdowns on the season, I think his.
I've liked the way he's looked and
Yeah,
progressed.
I think he's getting there, and Georgia's, they've struggled to put teams away this year. They struggled with Kent State, they struggled with Missouri, and I think Florida is more talented than either of those teams. So I think that combined with the rivalry factor, Florida may be able to keep this within a couple touchdowns. Like you said, they're going to have to slow this game down, make it ugly, maybe force Georgia into some turnovers or some short 3 and outs. But I think it was worth a look at the spread and maybe even the money line.
Yeah. I just, I have to pull back off my Florida. I've ridden them for a while, and I'm tired of watching wide receivers run straight down the field with no defensive back or safety anywhere around them.
The other thing, and you said it with both of these games in the SEC.
Yeah.
Georgia could be looking ahead to the big matchup next week. Florida's not typically a team you look past, but this year they may be.
Yeah. And we'll flip to the other one. Kentucky goes into Tennessee this week. Another
rivalry
game where it's a rivalry.
The Beer Barrel.
The Beer Barrel. I don't think we're allowed to do that one anymore either. But anyway, it promotes alcoholism among college students because none of them drink except the fact that we now sell alcohol in the stadium. But anyway, now I'm on the reverse feel of this from you. I think this is Tennessee's sort of look-ahead spot. Like I told you earlier, Herb Street was already on ESPN touting Tennessee as the favorite in the Georgia game. Everybody is just blowing past this Kentucky team, which, I don't think this Kentucky team is very good. But I do respect the style of play that they do, and they muck up games.
Yeah.
And, Tennessee hasn't had a game where it's been sort of mucked up, all that much. And it gives me a little bit of a feel here that Kentucky's going to get in there. This game they're going to try to slow it to a creepy crawl where, they're probably running one offensive play every, 2 minutes if they have the chance, and slow this game and just make it a run, mucky game. We'll see what they can do. They aren't anywhere near talented enough, and their offense, quite honestly, has not been good enough. Yeah. But if they do get it into that type of game, that's where I think momentum will start to build. Crowd will get nervous because everybody is very excited to watch Georgia, Tennessee, and the greatest college football game that ever has been played. We ignore it. Last year, that was Alabama and Georgia, and it changes every year. But nonetheless, I just feel like Kentucky will be able to get their sort of game plan on here. So I'm going to ride the 12.5 on this one. And they've been able to do it the last handful of years. Now, not last year, but a couple of years before that, they've been able to sort of muck these games up. And I believe they won one where they were using a man who'd never thrown a pass since high school. So that's sort of where I was on this one. It feels like a look-ahead spot for me.
Yeah, I just look at this. Initially, I was in the same camp as you there, but as I've read about this Tennessee team getting ready for this week, I don't think Heupel's going to have this team looking ahead to this Georgia matchup. We'll see if they get their receiver Tillman back. One thing you got to watch is Levis. He's back from his injury, but he's still giving out a lot of turnovers.
Yeah.
Still kind of an interception machine. Now Tennessee, not big in takeaways, but if you're going to grace this Tennessee with some free stops that they don't have to earn on defense, that could be a huge momentum swing for Tennessee's favor, who's, even if they're mucked up and slowed down, I'm still convinced we'll put 30 points on the board. And I just don't know what Levis is going to be able to do because, they talk about Kentucky's strength being running the ball. That's, Tennessee's not weak at stopping the run. Their weakness is in the secondary, and I don't know if Levis is going to be able to take advantage of that.
Well, they're trying to get him as the number one pick. So if there's
never understood that.
If there's a secondary to carve up, it should be this one. Nonetheless, I don't quite understand it as well. I'd rather have the Florida kid. Granted, he hasn't shown quite the experience, but I see tools there. I haven't seen tools other than he can throw the ball a very far way, which I'm not sure is quite an actual
But the
tool.
NFL is all about decision making, and he hasn't proven to me that he can do that. his decision-making lost them that Ole Miss game this year that really kind of killed their momentum on any hopes they had for an amazing season this year. So, they bounced back a little bit. They got the big win against Mississippi State, but I don't think they're going to be able to hang with Tennessee.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this game plays out. All right, let's get into our bets for the SEC. You got a bunch. You loaded up on the SEC this week.
This is another one of those weird lines that I saw. Arkansas only -3.5 at Auburn. I know it's on the road, but this Arkansas team is way better than Auburn. Auburn's pretty terrible. I think the only time I came close to even wanting to take Auburn this year was against Ole Miss, who I thought was overrated. But Arkansas only minus
not for
3.5.
Storms. We would have won a lot of money.
Yeah. They went into BYU and dominated that game. I was really impressed by the way they had to go on the road in the middle of the SEC schedule all the way out to BYU. They went and took care of business, and I think they're going to do the same here at Auburn. I've got a 3-unit play on that. It's one of my bigger ones this week. Now, I'm going to take we talked about Florida. I'm taking the spread plus the 22. I've got 2 units on that. I think they're going to keep this a little closer than what the spread indicates. And for that reason, I'm going to take a little bit of a shot, half a unit on the money line. Just, crazy stuff happens in college football. We haven't had too many, crazy upsets in the SEC this year other than the Tennessee-Alabama game. Pretty much things have gone as expected. So this
considering preseason what everybody thought of A&M, everybody has destroyed them,
But anyway, I think this is an opportunity, rivalry game, look-ahead potential, talent. I don't think the talent discrepancy is 22 points, so I think they're going to keep this close. And so it's worth a shot on the money line. Next up, I look at this matchup between Missouri and South Carolina. Not going to be a great game to watch, but this line is only at 47. I think there's going to be more points scored in this. Now, Missouri traditionally doesn't score a whole lot, but I think they're going to be able to move the ball against the South Carolina defense. And then last up, we talked about it, I'm taking the Tennessee minus the 12.5 versus Kentucky.
All right, I'm going to go with Missouri plus the 4 versus South Carolina. I have no idea why this South Carolina team is ranked. All of a sudden, they win a couple games, one being Kentucky.
They beat a terrible A&M.
Yes, they beat a terrible A&M team. They beat a Kentucky team who was playing a quarterback who had not ever played, and all of a sudden, they're ranked in the top 25. I recall how they were playing early in the year, so, I wouldn't call Mizzou great, but they tend to play every game close. Yeah. It's a little Kentucky light. They sort of play aggro style that is not fun to play. And the one thing I do know is even as South Carolina has played well, their quarterback still also turns the ball over a ton. So I think Missouri plus 4, I really like that one. Kentucky, I'm going to take the 12.5 in that one. I'm going to go with A&M plus the 2.5 at home versus Ole Miss. I don't think this Ole Miss team is very good. They run the ball really well. The one thing I do think A&M is capable of doing is stopping the run. The one thing they do on offense that is similarly half okay is run the ball, and Ole Miss the last couple of weeks has shown an inability to stop the run. So I think this matchup secretly sort of favors Texas A&M as completely awful as they have been. I just think
Glenn Jimbo desperately needs it.
And they've lost the last handful on the road. Back home, Ole Miss going on the road after an LSU game where they gave up 1 billion yards. The defense that we thought was half okay earlier in the year is starting to show some cracks. They gave up 300 yards to Tank Beags. We saw 2 weeks ago in that Auburn game. I think A&M 2.5 good spot here, and then we're just going to throw a little on that Kentucky money line plus 360. I wanted to be more in the 4s, but whatever. All right. No key matchups really in the Sun Belt. This has sort of been a different, disappointing conference a little bit this year. But a couple fun games and matchups. So we both got the same thing. Bet on this one, so we both liked it. So that'll either be really, really good or really, really bad. I don't know which way to lay, but I think when we've agreed, our record's been pretty good. So maybe we'll hit it off and have a good Sun Belt day. So what are you looking at in the Sun Belt for your bets?
Yeah, I'm looking at this matchup between Old Dominion and Georgia State. I like Old Dominion getting the 4 points here. I've got a 2-unit play on that. I think these are pretty evenly matched teams, and Old Dominion's really been playing up to their competition, and Georgia State's been kind of hot and cold. So give me the points there. And then this one really didn't make any sense to me. Coastal Carolina getting 2 at Marshall. I've got 2 units on that. I think the wrong team is favored here. Coastal Carolina should win this, no brainer.
Yeah, same as you. Old Dominion are going to take the 4 versus Georgia State. Tough game versus Georgia Southern. Almost pulled that one out, but I think this. They'll be able to handle going into Georgia State, cover that 4. The Coastal Carolina one, you mentioned it, plus 2.5. This Marshall team, look at their record. They have not been good and gotten roasted by pretty much everyone but Notre Dame. And if you watch that Notre Dame game, they didn't score. Notre Dame threw 2 pick sixes and fumbled the ball wherever Marshall kicked a field goal. It wasn't like they were, grinding up and down and, the field and putting on amazing offense. I look at this similar to the one I took was a week and a half ago when Lafayette went into Marshall and they gave them 9 points. And I was like, Lafayette's lost some close ones here on the road, but they're just a better team than that, and they won outright. So, a similar thing here. Coastal's defense has been poor, but Marshall isn't really a threat. And if you're getting in a shootout, Marshall, Coastal Carolina, I'm going to be on the end of Coastal Carolina here. So, all right, I put together a couple parlays. Just because I felt bad for not having any for 2 weeks after I loaded up for the first, 7 weeks of the season and was on fire. But these aren't going to be the fun kind of parlays of spread. I just put together a couple money line parlays. Oklahoma, Baylor, A&M, plus 764 on that one. We're going money line parlay on this one. Miami of Ohio, Toledo, and Rice. So we're going Mac and throwing my boys Rice in there. And sadly, Will Healy out of Charlotte. I loved the way they played, but occasionally you have to win football games as well and not just be fun to watch. Going into Rice, they'll probably be down and get killed. And then lastly, we're going UAB, Ohio State, Minnesota. Didn't get to talk about that Minnesota game. They've lost the right to be in the mix of the top teams. But UAB, Ohio State, Minnesota, minus 108 on that parlay. So those are my parlays for the week. What do you got for us?
Start off with an upset special here. I had my money line play on Florida. Why not juice it up a little bit more? I threw in the money line Coastal Carolina 2-teamer, makes it almost plus 2,000, plus 1979. I put a quarter of a unit on that, really just kind of doubling up on that Florida play there. I think Coastal should be a lock, but we'll see what Florida can do. Another money line parlay I've got Coastal, Oklahoma State, Old Dominion, getting some value on Coastal and Old Dominion, and only and a little bit on Oklahoma State too. So I got plus 840 on that 1 unit play, and then I'm going to play 3-team spread parlay, plus 596, 2 units. I'm going to take Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Wake Forest minus their spreads there. I think those should all be good winners.
Yeah, a lot of action this week. We'll see if we can have another hot week.
Green week.
Both come out in the green and win you some money. Be sure to like and subscribe. Don't miss any of our shows. Achilles Reign will be in here to sort of handicap the NFL, but I don't know if there is any handicapping the NFL because there's 1.5 good teams and everybody else is pretty much just hard garbage and you don't know what's coming week to week. But hey, that's why we like betting on the NFL. Anyway, be sure to like, subscribe, and catch all our shows. Winning Daily is back, so you can win money on the NBA and all the other sports that we don't get to talk about on a day-to-day basis. Be in the know to win that dough. That's our show, and we're out.
Greenlight Network presents Football Time.